the Madras Chamber, can I invite the three speakers and Mr. Ashok and Mr. Srinivasan to come to the head table. Mr. Prabhu, Mr. V. Chandrasekaran and Professor Harish Guruswamy, please. You can move my. I'll sit there. We are very happy to have the first Food for Thought program post-COVID on a very interesting and I should say trendy topic. I will just introduce the chamber and the Food for Thought and leave the subject to the subject experts here. The Madras Chamber, probably most of you know, is the oldest chamber in southern India, second oldest in the country, next only to Bombay Chamber of Commerce, and we are into 187 years currently, having started in the year 1836. We have the historian, Mr. V. Sriram, who wrote on us here. So if any of you want to have more authentic information about the history of the chamber, here is the person. You can ask him. Ask about the history of the chamber, not about the Singol. The point I want to make it is the chamber, which will be hitting its second bicentenary celebrations in the next 13 years, is still saying very relevant, very dynamic to the changing needs of the members. This program is a proof. And thanks to the expert committees and working groups we have 13 expert committees on different subjects and 4 working groups and a women business council, to be very precise. All of them act as the think tank for the chamber. As far as this interesting concept of Food for Thought, this was initiated during our 175th year along with many other initiatives. The idea came that we should look beyond just businesses and take up contemporary subjects, many a times debatable ones, and have or provide a platform for people to have an unbiased discussion to get a panoramic view of the subject matter. Incidentally, our first Food for Thought breakfast meeting was on food security. That is the time we decided we'll call the series as Food for Thought series going forward. Of course, food comes first, the thought follows. Probably contrary to what Thiruvalluvar said. Here it is the reverse. We start with Vaitrukunavu. Having said that, we have had around 60 Food for Thought so far on various subjects. To name a few, I should say we had something on nuclear power, to be or not to be, RERA, whether it is still under construction, employment versus employability debate, right education and right to education, and very closer to today's topic, we had a few years back, NI versus AI, and we also had man versus machine, cloud computing, whether or whether. So very interesting series of talks, subjects we have handled. Of course, during COVID, we had to go a little slow because the food was missing. But even then, we had few programs. One interesting virtual Food for Thought we had was on work from home, forever or never. You can guess what the people would have voted for. So today, we are really happy to be back, to meet you all in person, to have the food, not virtually, again in person, and discuss a very, very interesting and, as I said, a very trending topic. In fact, please excuse us if there is inconvenience. Since it's a working day, we never expected a full hall, though we provided for 100. I don't know whether ChatGPT sent a reminder to our members last evening. So thank you so much for joining. I would just stop here now and request Mr. Ashok, the chairman of our ITES committee, under which committee this program is being driven, to say a few words and also introduce the speakers to the audience. We are all, I'm sure, here to have a very, very vibrant discussion on a very vibrant subject. Thank you. Have a good day. Just please put your mobile phones on silent mode.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the good heads up about the chamber and Food for Thought. I think, yeah, nothing works without a food. and that too on in a morning session. So the thought now is going to follow the food. Today, I think the literacy is getting redefined with a one single word called ChatGPT. If somebody says, do you know ChatGPT, then we can call ourselves as a literate. And somebody says, I don't know ChatGPT, then they say, oh, you don't know ChatGPT. That's becoming a norm of days. So exponentially, this word is catching like a forest fire across the world. What is so great about this product and what is great about this technology? Why is it more spoken today in the world? It's all started in 2017 when a gentleman presented his paper first on about transformative AI. So that's how the whole thing has started in 2000. It's not very far. From there, one company or one association or one organization, OpenAI, jumped into it and got into making it to a 28 billion valuation company today. They built this product so beautifully where it can respond to us like a human-like behavior. You would never know, and whatever I'm talking, all data I've gathered from ChatGPT. So if I make any mistakes, the experts are sitting here, they should not blame me, they should blame only ChatGPT. Amazingly, this as a company which is probably established and then getting into a $28 billion and Microsoft invested in that, shows there is something big happening. But I'm sure that each one of you have got your own day with ChatGPT already. You're using it or you will be using it. It's so amazing that the way it responds back to us. Somebody tested the ChatGPT on a board with a question, how many head a President of India has? And it stops and answers, President of India is a human being, he has only one head. I think you're trying to play a game with me. I am an AI generated model and I have built on so many data sets, so I can be very precise in my answer. So beautifully this product is defined, and February to April this year, the number of hits on ChatGPT went exponentially higher to 1.8 billion. And January, New York State Education Department comes and says, I'm going to ban ChatGPT in the schools. In Jan 23, I'm not talking, we have historian Sriram here, we're not talking history, just about 3-4 months back, still it's in history. So, and in May, same education department comes and lifts the ban, saying that now you can go use ChatGPT in the schools. What makes it to shift the policy in a period of 6 months from banning a ChatGPT to opening a ChatGPT? Today, it is most debated whether this is right or wrong. Whether this is actually going to make a difference to humankind, or it's going to compete with the human, or is it going to make a thing? While discussing, it was a revelation to me. 7 countries in the world is banned from accessing ChatGPT, including China and Russia. The data is a new oil, and ChatGPT is built on data modeling. And the data modeling is not available to certain countries for a certain purpose. Who decides that? What's happening to that when it comes to the political attention to it? So countries like China and if they are going to build a thing, they will have a limited set of data sets to train the models compared to what ChatGPT or a bot can do. So these are all the questions which need to get resolved as we go. But certainly, like how for thing elated, now there is definitely a good elation for a human mankind, because we have identified and we got something which is actually talking to us like our own babies and our own friends and our own colleagues and our own thing, another human being. You see that from a machine, you get elated, and that's exactly where the current place we are in. Having said that, we've decided that we, in a chamber, we always try to do something which is of most interest, which we could see from the audience in the morning today. Whether ChatGPT is going to be, because very early we have did this NI versus AI a few years back. Now we are doing a ChatGPT, which is a extrapolated version of an AI. Whether this is going to be good or bad. So, and we have a wonderful panelist today, people who are probably closely following this and working on to it. We have Mr. Prabhu, and we have Mr. Harish, and we have Mr. V. Chandrasekaran. So the format of FFT is always like, typically like Solomon Papaya Pattimandram. So one will go and talk for, and that's going to be Prabhu, and one is going to say why not, that's going to be VC, and we have a professor who's going to come back and say, hey guys, don't fight. Okay, there's something in between, and we are going to have a neutral. So the format is going to be like that, and these three people are going to come there, share their views about ChatGPT, for, against, and the neutral. ChatGPT certainly has a lot of advantages and limitations, which we will get to know from them, and that's a starting point for us. And rest of the life, we will be evolving along with the ChatGPT. As it evolves, we will also evolve, try to understand and work how we are going to work with that. With that, let me introduce the first speaker, Mr. Prabhu. So Mr. Prabhu is an independent IT consultant specializing in robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, and ChatGPT. He has over 28 years of IT experience spanning IT companies including TCS, Mahindra, Satyam, Cognizant, UST, Global, and Virtusa. Prabhu leverages ChatGPT to create intelligent chatbot applications and actively shares his knowledge through LinkedIn. And we got him through LinkedIn. Before that, we don't know who's Prabhu is, and then we were trying to find, because a new topic, who will call, who can come and speak. Somebody should be relevant, should not someone, so then we caught him through LinkedIn. So he provides a sales and marketing support to RPA and AI service providers, offers IT corporate training and mentors and IT startups. His commitments, continuous learning and staying updated with the technology advancements makes him a valuable asset in the fields of RPA, AI, and ChatGPT. With that, over to you, Mr. Prabhu. You can tell us why ChatGPT is going to be good for us.
Thank you very much.
You want to move here?
So I thought you would be introducing all three first. So you'll do the other two. Okay. Duplicate, like extend to the window. ಇಲ್ಲ ಒರೇ ನಿಮಿಷ ಅದ ಒರೇ ನಿಮಿಷ ಆ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಶೋ ಒರೇ ನಿಮಿಷ ಹಾಂ ಓಕೆ ಗ್ರೇಟ್. So thank you, Ashok. That was a wonderful introduction. And so that was a wonderful introduction. And you've also given a very good primer in terms of what's the background for ChatGPT. So let me just quickly go on to what I wanted to talk about, because quite a bit that I want to talk about, and maybe 20 minutes may not be sufficient. So let me try and skip through some of this actually. Okay. So first, before we get into ChatGPT, I just wanted to do a little bit of ground setting for the debate per se. So I'm definitely going to talk about the fact that ChatGPT is a overwhelming boon. And why will you say that a technology or a tool is a boom? If it's got some groundbreaking innovation, if it is able to do something that your current technology wasn't able to do before, then you'll call it a boon. Similarly, if there are solutions available, but you're able to give a better solution for it at a much lower cost and much more effectively, even then it becomes a boom, the new technology or the tool. And the main feature of a tool to be called as a boon is that it has to be widely accessible to a large global population. It cannot be sufficient that it gives you all these the first two benefits only to a small population. Okay, so those are the three tenets. And I'll kind of base my discussion for the next 20 minutes odd on these three surmises. Yeah? Okay, now before we get into all that, though Mr. Ashok has spoken about ChatGPT from a beginner's point of view, I'll quickly state certain facts, because these are facts that you should know for sure because until you do not understand what ChatGPT is from a larger perspective, you will not be able to relate to the good points that I'm talking about. So let's first get that connect between the audience and ChatGPT. So what is ChatGPT? So you've heard about the term ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is not the actual technology that we're talking about. ChatGPT is only a chatbot which uses the groundbreaking technology that we'll be talking about. ChatGPT basically uses an underlying engine called as an LLM. An LLM is a large language model. And what is a large language model? A language model is basically something which is a machine learning model which will be able to learn iteratively from a lot of existing information that is there. And based on this iterative learning, it will be also able to converse with humans in a natural language processing. So just like I'm conversing with you, it will be able to converse, of course, through text. We'll also be seeing that. And the only reason for text being a restriction is that we are using ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is not multimodal. We'll talk about what multimodality is as well. But ChatGPT is unimodal because it's a chatbot, and unimodal means only text. Okay? So that's the first part. Now, before we get into LLMs, if you see that this is the overall space, you have artificial intelligence. Machine learning is a subset of that. Neural networks is a subset of that. Deep learning is a subset of that. And then you have the discipline that we are talking about, which is generative AI. So what we mean by generative AI is any kind of content that can be generated using AI. And we'll see that content is going to be of different types. Okay, that's where multimodality will come in. Okay, and so ChatGPT is right in that center there, as part of that small circle at the bottom, where you have generative AI. Yeah. So now, what are the features of generative AI? It can basically it has an ability to generate various types of content. Okay, text, images, video, and audio. So this is the 4 largest types. Okay, but then using generative AI, you can do a lot of other things, which we will not go into for now. Let's just keep it at this: text, images, video, and audio. Okay, and it's got a wide range of knowledge. We'll again come to why we say it's a wide range of knowledge. And then it's also capable of debugging and writing computer programs. We'll also talk about that. So this is another key thing you need to know. It has got a memory of previous responses and prompts. So what we mean by that is, I think all of us must be using Google, right? So if you use Google, if you put in a particular search query and then continue with the second search query, for the second search query, Google doesn't know what you asked in the first search query, right? So which means it's not a conversation that is happening, it is just transactions that happen for each search query that you put in. Whereas if you go into ChatGPT and if you remain in the same thread, and that's where I'll also show you that you can have multiple conversations through multiple threads. But if you're in the same conversation and you asked as part of that same conversations 100 questions to ChatGPT as part of that conversation thread, then it remembers all the previous 100 questions it asks you, and when you ask it a 101st question, it keeps all this in the background when it answers your question. For example, if one of the previous questions you had asked was that, answer all my questions with respect to Mr. X, then if you ask it a 101st question saying that, what is he doing now, even if you use a pronoun, he'll know that, or rather he in the sense, ChatGPT will know that he refers to Mr. X that you mentioned before. So that's the context. Okay, so this is a key concept for you to know. And this is what kind of predicates how you will be having that conversation. This is one aspect of that predication. Yeah, so keep that in mind. And then see, it's got, of course, it also filters a lot of offensive responses. And then the last point is that it enables users to follow up corrections to its responses. So just like, say I'm having a chat with you. You ask me a question and then I give you an answer. But maybe the answer that I gave you does not fit the question, or you feel that it doesn't fit the answer you asked, or rather the question you asked. So what would you tell me? You would tell me, no, this is not what I was asking. This is actually what I want. So please give me a different answer, right? You can do that with ChatGPT. As part of your conversation, it is an iterative way to acquire the knowledge that you're trying to acquire by having this conversation with ChatGPT. So these are all concepts that you should know. And once you kind of master these basic concepts, it becomes much more effective for you, from a usage point of view for ChatGPT. So these are some of the concepts. So I'm not even getting into the debate of why a ChatGPT is going to be a boon. I thought I'll first kind of seed these thoughts. And once you seed these thoughts, you yourself will know why it's a boon. Yeah? Yeah, okay, great. So now, ChatGPT, we have two versions right now in the market, which is 3.5. And then you have the plus version, which is the paid version, which is the 4. And this is a multimodal, it's a multimodal, I'll just show you quickly what I mean by multimodality. For example, say you take up, I'm just randomly going to YouTube, okay? This is not something set up and all that. I'm just going randomly to YouTube. What oh, அது கட் பண்ணாத வருமா ஏன் அப்படி எங்க இருக்குது அது என்னாச்சு Huh? No, I think no, I know. I think it's certainly stuck. Yeah. So I'm just randomly picking up a video, okay? So I just pick up a video randomly.
If you want to make 1 lakh a month,
let's not play this. But what I can do is that, see, this is an extension for ChatGPT that is here. This summarize that you see, this will usually not be there in YouTube, but this is an extension. So I just click on that, and then I can summarize the video, like say to a set of bullet points or whatever. Wi-Fi is not working, I suppose. Oh, the Wi-Fi is very slow. Oh, yeah. So it will automatically summarize this. And similarly, you can also say, write this into an article, whatever you want to do. There are different options that you can do here. Okay, so this is one aspect of multimodality. So what we are talking about here is that you've got a video, you can convert this to text. And to convert it to text is just a couple of seconds. Yeah. And you can see, actually this is not a new feature, and this is not something that ChatGPT gives you, because if you see here at the bottom, you'll have something called as a transcript. So which means audio to text conversion is already there for quite some time, even before ChatGPT came in. But what we are doing through this is that we are taking the text which is there, which is present as a transcript, and you can kind of summarize it and all that. Rather than copying the text here, going to ChatGPT and pasting it, you directly have a summary here, and say you want to download this as a PDF. You can just download this as a PDF. Yeah, whatever. So you can do this for any video on YouTube, or if you have your own video. If you have your own video, of course, it should have some audio content to it. If it doesn't have, because if it has an audio content to it, you can transcribe it to a text. And once you get it, okay, text is the via media for all this multimodality. To convert from something to something else, text is the via media. So if you are able to, if you have a video with you, with audio in it as well, then the audio can be converted to a text, and then the text can be kind of summarized in any manner you want. And from a text, you can convert it back to another video. I can also show you tools for that. The reverse is also possible. So which means you can take, say, a 1 hour video that you have, okay, and say you want a 5-minute video on it. What would you do earlier? You would give it to a creative agency. The creative agency would basically start playing the video, say, 20 times, and then understand the gist of what that is there, and then write down a script for say 5 minutes, and then again will use another specialized software and then create this. Whereas here you don't need to do all that. I just showed you in a few seconds how you can convert that video to text. Okay, and if I have time, I will also show you some of the video tools that are there where you can take the small text and then put it back in. Yeah? Okay. One sec, so that, yeah. Yeah, so I'll come back to this. Yeah, great. So this is what we mean by multimodality, okay? So hopefully that is registered. So let's go into this. So this is the meat of the technology. ChatGPT is just a fancy name for that chatbot, but the meat of the technology, what is the engine that drives ChatGPT? This is the engine that drives ChatGPT, which is the large language model. Okay, so large language models, I'm sure Dr. Harish will be able to give you a lot of explanations on what large language models are. I will not burden you with that. I'll just use layman terms, okay? From a user's point of view, how should you understand what a large language model is? A large language model, you should just think of it as a super smart assistant now, okay? And I'm specifically and consciously using the word assistant here because there's a lot of talk about AI taking away your jobs. But AI will not take off your jobs. It is a person who is well versed in AI who will take over your job. So there's a key thing that all of us need to know, because this is a paradigm shift that we are talking about. We are in the 4th industrial revolution, okay? And for whatever anybody wants to do, you cannot stop the 4th industrial revolution, right? So you'll have to see what is the best you can do to ride this wave, okay? So again, I'm repeating, AI will not take away someone's job. It is a person who is well versed with AI who will take away someone's job, okay? Okay, great. So now, some of the key aspects that you should know about LLMs, especially since all of us know about what Google is and what a search engine is. See, Google just does keyword matching. For example, say the internet has got a whole lot of articles, whole lot of content. And each of these articles are indexed with what is called as keywords, okay? So in Google, if I go and then type a particular keyword or a phrase, it takes keywords from that. And then it goes and looks at all the zillions of articles or content that is there on the web. And then wherever this keyword matches, and then using its algorithms, will prioritize it in a particular order. And then it will give you that, okay? But that is only information that is being given to you by Google. And there are zillions of information, unwanted. You may not want what it is giving you because it will give it to you based on its own algorithm, which means even the order in which it is giving it to you is based on an order that Google wants. It's not based on an order that you want. Okay, so that is where an LLM is completely different. An LLM basically gives you knowledge, and it doesn't do keyword matching and all that. What was done was that as part of a huge exercise, where there was something called as training given to these LLMs, almost all the information that was present on the internet as of a 6-month period preceding September 2021 has been fed into the LLM, and then we do not know the way in which it is stored. At least I don't know the way in which it is stored. But there is a concept called as embeddings and all that. Let's not get into it. But there's basically almost all the knowledge that was there on the internet, anything that was publicly available. When 3.5 was done, it was only textual data or largely textual data. But for 4, there's also been a lot of other multimodal data that has also been taken in. And all this data has been assimilated and kept as knowledge within the LLM. And so when you ask it a question, since it has got a capability called as NLP is natural language processing. So which means it can converse with you and me just like humans converse using natural language processing. So when I ask it a question in an LLM, it is not as though I'm doing a keyword matching like Google. I'm asking it a question, the LLM understands my question, and based on this understanding of the question that I ask, it looks at all this vast amounts of knowledge present with it, and then distills that knowledge, and then gives me an answer. So that's why it's fantastic, okay? So we'll get into why it's fantastic, yeah? And then, so we also spoke about the fact that it's got context, conversations, and all that, yeah? So this is what I already spoke about in terms of how do you compare this with a search engine and an LLM. So I'll quickly get into that. there'll be a whole lot of customization that you can do because of all this. We'll also get into that. And it is basically knowledge generation, and it is not information sharing. Yeah. So this is the key aspect. The one that is coming at the right at the bottom, that just came in, whatever came in at the bottom right now, think of ChatGPT as a person and converse with it. This is a key thing. As and when you start using this, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because only when you start using the tool will you understand what I'm talking about here. But this is another thing you have to keep in mind. Yeah, so this is some of the statistics in terms of why we are saying it's got so much of vast knowledge with it. So, and all these statistics are taken from this website. So that's a credit to the website as well. And so if you see this here, the one on the top left-hand side. So that talks of what are the sources for your training data set. If you see 63% of the sources for the training data set is on something called as web crawl. What do we mean by web crawl? Web crawl is nothing but any publicly available website which is available for public access was accessed by the LLM and knowledge was taken from there. So which means even the MCCI website, whatever was the public, pieces of it, which didn't require a user ID password, has also been accessed. And similarly, all the websites that all of us have here, anything that doesn't require a private user ID password, anything that is public, has been accessed by the LLM, and it knows about all this information that is there on the web. But like we said, the cutoff is 2021. Okay, great. And if you see this, another aspect to this is that the more data that you give a LLM, the more smarter it becomes. Okay, but then when you get more data fed into it, you should have a way to understand the data and give it back to you, right? So the more data you feed into it, the more the number of programmable parameters that the LLM has. Okay, so what I mean by programmable parameters is that, say if I was a designer and if I'm going to design a computer application, the computer application may have maximum of say 80 parameters, 100 parameters. Beyond that, it becomes difficult for people to program. Okay, whereas if you look at that there, GPT-3 had 175 billion parameters. 175 billion parameters that are programmable. Human programming, we typically do 200, 300, 400 maybe, but not more than thousands. Okay, it's got 175 billion parameters, GPT-3. Okay, whereas GPT-4, which is the GPT plus, has got more than 1 trillion, more than 5 times that. Okay, so nobody even knows how the LLM makes use of these parameters to basically access that knowledge and then give it to you based on the prompt that comes in, right? So, and I wouldn't want to get into that as well, because a lot of people don't even have a clue of what it is, but you should know that this is there so that you understand the immense potential of it and why this large language model has got so much of knowledge with it, right? So that's another one you should know. And then see, ChatGPT is basically, okay, great. This is some user statistics as well, just to give you an inkling of the popularity of ChatGPT. ChatGPT came in sometime in November 2022, and within 5 days, it hit 1 million users, within 5 days. Okay, and within 2 months, it hit 100 million users. Now to compare this with TikTok, which was its closest competitor, TikTok took 2.5 years to hit 100 million. Okay, ChatGPT hit it in 2 months. Okay, which means 1/10 the time. Closest competitor, closest, yeah. So that's the kind of popularity of the technology. Okay, and if you start using it, you'll know why people are so crazy about it. Yeah, that's another one. Now, if you look at ChatGPT, this was designed to primarily work in English. Okay, but it understands inputs in 95 other languages, including several Indian languages, including Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, Telugu and all that, right? But I've used it for Tamil, but then sometimes it gives errors as well. My wife also knows about it. She's been telling me that because she's much more better in Tamil than me. So, but then there are issues, but you can use it for other languages as well. Yeah. And ChatGPT itself, there is a bot, was written using the Python programming language. But as part of the training data that was given to it, it knows several other programming languages as well. So which means you can give it a code in one programming language, say in Python, and if you ask it to convert it to HTML, of course, based on the functionality, if it can convert it, it will directly convert it and give it to you. Okay, that's because it knows everything. Okay, and if there is a person who knows everything, you can go and ask him anything, right? For example, we have Mr. Sriram here, and if you ask him anything on Madras, he'll tell you, right? That's because he knows everything about Madras. Now, just think of the best people. think of the best people for every discipline in the world. Think of the best pulmonologist in the world. Think of the best cancer specialist. So ChatGPT is exactly that. That's because anything that has been documented and was available in the internet as of 2021, September, is available with ChatGPT, not as information, but as knowledge. Okay, that's the key thing. Okay. Now, of course, we'll have to look at, no, I'll just come to, I'm not sure how much time, okay, that's what, I'm just coming to that. Yeah, I'm quickly coming to the industry use cases. Okay. So given that it's got all this knowledge, you can use it in practically any industry use case you want. I'm just taking marketing as an example, right? So see, content generation and personalization, these are the two most important capabilities that you will be using ChatGPT in almost every industrial use case you want to come up with, right? So content creation, we just spoke about it. You can give it any kind of content. I don't have time for giving you demos, but if I can give you demos, I'll be able to convey that much more better. But any kind of content that you want, right? If you want to write a blog, you just give it one word and then it'll write a blog, right? Some of these jokes in Tamil movies where you just give him a word and he'll talk endlessly, right? ChatGPT is like that, but it'll give you good content. Okay. So that's the difference. Yeah, of course, hallucinations are there, like Mr. Chandrasekaran will be talking about. But then you just have to give it a small cue, and it can give you a whole lot of information, right? So anything to do with content creation, and the best part is different types of content creation. Like for example, say if you wanted to write an email, and then you create a persona of a person. Okay, what's a persona? Okay, maybe I should just show you that quickly. Okay, I'm not sure whether I have time for that, but basically, let me try and explain what a persona is. Why does it? Oh, yeah. Okay, basically a persona is nothing but, for example, since it's got so much of information, and say I wanted to think like, say, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, our ex-Prime Minister. All that I need to say is that act as Mrs. Indira Gandhi, our ex-Prime Minister of India. Then what it does is that it's got this 175 billion parameters in ChatGPT 3 and 1 trillion parameters in ChatGPT 4. So that's something that happens to those parameters. And then subsequently, any of the data it takes, it accesses, and then answers your question will be based on those filters that come in. So that's called as a conditioning prompt. Once you give it a conditioning prompt and then ask it questions, it will give you questions, it will give you answers only based on that. So which means you can make the responses you get from ChatGPT as wide or as narrow as possible, even narrowing it down to a particular personality. Of course, if you say, I tried act as Prabhu Stanislaus, my name, but then it told me, sorry, I do not know who Prabhu Stanislaus is because I haven't written much on the internet prior to September 2021. I've been doing a lot of writing recently, but prior to September 2021, I haven't done much of writing. So it wouldn't know me. But if you put in Mr. Sriram's name, it could create a persona of Mr. Sriram. And then you could ask that persona questions, right? So there are those kind of use cases are there as well. But I think ChatGPT is trying to put in a kind of barriers to that because a lot of people misuse that. A lot of misuse that is happening because of that. So there are barriers coming in ChatGPT 4 for that, right? But what even ChatGPT 4 allows you to do is to come out with generic personas. So that's where if you look at this A and B testing for campaign optimization. In marketing, what do we mean by A and B testing? If suppose I want to do marketing of a particular product, but I have multiple ways in which I can do the marketing. I take two of the best options that I have, and then I will take two sample audiences or markets for it. I will create ad copy, two different ad copies. That's called as the A and B ad copy, and then give it in these two. And then I'll see what are the results that I get. Okay, so all that can now be automated using ChatGPT. Of course, not directly using this interface, but using the concept of APIs, which is application programming interfaces. And using APIs, you can kind of build a lot of tools, okay, using the APIs. But basically, it uses the LLM. Yeah, so I'll quickly come into this. Yeah, now if I look at, say, human resources, I can quickly, I think I have to show you this. Yeah, and say if I say MCCI wanted to say recruit somebody. Okay, say you wanted to recruit, say, somebody for marketing. Okay, you have to put together a job description, right? So you can just ask it, can you give me a job description for the role of a marketing executive? Okay, there's nothing else. There's no other information. Of course, if I give it much more information, it'll be able to give, but let's see what it does with this. Yeah? Okay, so it's giving me a job description. Okay? So now, if I've got a job description, now I know that there are, yeah, I'll quickly summarize. Another 3 minutes I'll summarize. Yeah? So now if I want to write a personalized email to a person to attract him to the role. Okay, it can also write an email. I think the Wi-Fi is a little slow. Yeah. The Wi-Fi is a little, so it can tell you anything. So, but the more details you give it, the more better this output is going to be. Yeah. So I'll quickly. I think beyond this, if I take time, Ashok will. Yeah. Okay. I'll quickly come to this because this is a key thing from the point of view of the debate. So you have the 4 industrial revolutions, okay, and we are in the 4th industrial revolution right now. It started a little while back, and if you see in all the 3 industrial revolutions prior, there have been gainers from it, there have been losers from it, okay, and there's not going to be. But one key thing is that if you see the gainers from the previous 3, there's a lot of documentary evidence for this, saying that the gainers have been a narrow set of people. So it's not been the wider population, but it's been, say, companies or specific countries, okay? Whereas if you look at the 4th industrial revolution, especially LLMs, it's going to be a much more wider set of people, yeah? So I'll quickly tell you why it's going to be the lump of labor fallacy is nothing but, what people usually think is that there is only a fixed number of jobs that are there at any point in the economy. And if there is going to be a new technology that comes in and takes up some portion of that, it means people are going to lose their jobs. But that's a fallacy. That's called as the lump of labor fallacy. What it means is that whenever a new technology comes in, there's going to be, your productivity is going to 3x or sometimes even 10x with all this that is coming in. So which means your economy grows. And if your economy grows, the number of jobs itself grows. So which means even if there are going to be some people who will be out of their current jobs, you get much more higher value paying jobs. And which means finally the net result is that people don't lose jobs. And this is something that has been seen in every industrial revolution. We are in the 4th industrial revolution and it's not going to be any different. Yeah. Now I'll quickly take this off as, okay. This is something great that you should know. I'll just wind up with this. It'll take, I'll read through this, but it'll take a total of 2 minutes. That's it. Yeah. So see, this is a wonderful article that I saw on the internet. It came in, I think, only yesterday or day before. You can actually check it up yourself. Why AI will save the world? It's a comprehensive article. This is a very, very small extract from that. Okay, I'll just read through it slowly so that you can assimilate it. Then I'll quickly get into some of the technicalities there. So I'll just read it. So just bear with me and listen a little carefully, please. In our new era of AI, every child will have an AI tutor that is infinitely patient, infinitely compassionate, infinitely knowledgeable, infinitely helpful. The AI tutor will be by each child's side every step of their development, helping them maximize their potential with the machine version of infinite love. Every person will have an AI assistant, coach, mentor, trainer, advisor, therapist that is infinitely patient, infinitely compassionate, knowledgeable, and helpful. The AI assistant will be present through all of life's opportunities and challenges, maximizing every person's outcomes. Every scientist will have an AI assistant collaborator partner that will greatly expand the scope of scientific research and achievement. Every artist, every engineer, every business person, every doctor, every caregiver will have the same in their worlds. Every leader of people, CEO, government official, non-profit president, athletic coach, teacher will have the same. The magnification effects of better decisions by leaders across the people they lead are enormous. So this intelligence augmentation will be the most important of all. So I'll just stop with that. So if I had more time, I could actually get into some examples, but thank you for patiently listening to me. Thank you.
Mr. Prabhu, for that wonderful insight about ChatGPT. I think so he's given a detailed thing. It sounds to me like ChatGPT is probably the God creation which has come in, which is going to take away everything possible, and you have a different persona like Onion, so which you can create and you can come and do everything and everything. So that's how the ChatGPT looks to me in the last 20-30 minutes of his thing. So yeah, maybe true, maybe because I heard that from a live scenario, 11,500 lines of snuggy code in a software got re-returned in less than by 2 days by a project manager to 1,200 line, a legacy application which did all the sluggishness of the program, which was aided by ChatGPT. So there is evidence also to say yes, that's going to be the scenario. With that, let me introduce Mr. V. Chandrasekaran, popularly known as VC. He is the director and co-founder of Congruent Solutions. Mr. Chandrasekaran has 28 years of experience in software development and business process outsourcing. Known for his expertise in setting up a large offshore development centers, he has enabled Congruent to be one of the early companies to be ISO 9001 certified for software development services. He has been advising company on all key initiatives supporting our business strategy, including core DC development. Apart from the core team, he managed 2 acquisitions in US and consequent merger with a business operation. An industrial engineer from College of Engineering, Chennai, he has co-founded Servoy Services, India's first HR BPO company to be ISO 27001 certified, and played a key role of a full-time chief technology officer there. With that, VC is going to come and tell us it's very difficult job for him, because being a technologist to come and talk against ChatGPT is a bit of a difficult thing. I'm sure you will manage.
Thank you so much, Ashok. Privileged to be here. Tamil theriyuma ellarkum. Who doesn't know English? I'm sorry, Tamil. Who doesn't know Tamil? Okay. Because I'll usually in my conversation I'll slip like bilingual and all that. So that's why I wanted to know the lay of the land. So first of all, Ashok did thank you for the introduction. Ashok, when he initially made the comments, he said, Prabhu will come and talk about why ChatGPT, and VC will follow it and say, why not? Right? No, why not? So that's the big difference. And I'm a technologist, okay? I'm also a fan of ChatGPT because of the sheer brilliance of the thought that has gone behind the product, what it can do, what it can, all that. Recently, as we are speaking today, Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, is in India. He's potentially meeting Modi and everybody else. Okay, and he's recently there was a series of congressional hearings in the U.S. and Senator Blumenthal did a phenomenal entry into the whole thing. He came and said, "Hey, listen, let me set the context," and then played an audio. You would have seen this. It's been doing the rounds in the YouTube and all that. And then he talks eloquently about what ChatGPT is doing and what is the kind of ramifications it's got for governments, democracy, public policy, and everything. He is not opening his mouth. And he says this is not a lip sync problem. It was the script generated by ChatGPT for him. And another AI tool used this sample voice and voiced it the whole thing. It spoke like Blumenthal, right? And it was like really shocking to everybody. That's how the whole thing started. And there's a very big researcher in MIT called Max Tegmark. So many of you might have heard of him. Great thinker, physicist. And he said that, and he, along with some 50,000 signatories, including, of course, Sam Altman, I don't think he signed it. But you all know Harari and several other people have signed it. To say that, please, he's written a letter to all the governments in the world. Earlier, AI was about, I have the knowledge. I will go and tell the computer how to use the knowledge I have, and then it will do it, right? That's the expert system kind of thinking. Now this AI is all completely pattern matching. It actually understands patterns like how we understand patterns. So therefore it's like saying, I'm going to create a machine which will be like me, nearly behaving like me, right? So I'm going to talk about some of this. As the topic says, let's see whether it is a Jekyll or a Hyde. So this is the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development definition of the machine-based system, which is AI or generative AI or any of those things you say. In this thing, the operative word I want you to look at is human-defined objectives. Okay? So OECD still believes that humans can give what AI should be doing and it will do for us like a servant. Right? So it is subservient to the whole thing. And that's what we are going to see. Okay? Because many times, actually, when I was my first job, I used to travel to Egmore. And people who are my vintage will realize that as you're driving, I used to be wondering because there'll be big, huge billboards. And the Tagaratla pannirpaanga, right? Painted white, and somebody will come and sketch. Somebody will do some first level of code. It'll go on for 10 days, okay? And I used to be always scared looking at it because scaffolding and all will be there. And they'll be hanging on it and painting, right? It's a very dangerous profession. So suddenly, it was 1985 time frame, 83, 84, 85 time frame. I went abroad and came back and then, started working back again here. Suddenly, I don't see any of those painters. 3M has come. Everything is flex. And far more, vivid colors and everything. And I wondered, what happened to all those painters, right? Some people took to driving. Some people to do some menial jobs. Some people just was drinking away to glory, screwing up their families, okay? So every technology has a disruption. Keep that in mind. And what is really worrying about AI is the scale of disruption that it is likely to do on humanity. That's what I would like to talk about. In fact, Max Tegmark said in his releasing his letter, he says, please understand that entire civilization is at a fork right now. You have to decide, is what he says. So, to really get to understand this whole thing, I would like to give a primer on, very short primer on, we need to understand what is language. What determines language to humanity? What determines language to the individual? What happens, right? Right from our Vedanta period, one concept is, it's through whatever I learned, they differentiate nama and the nami, word and the object, right? If you say it's a tree, it's not the tree. The tree is a mnemonic or a symbol which represents something which I am calling tree, but that's a concept I create in my mind. Okay? When a child goes and you don't give him any word, it doesn't know tree, but it senses tree. There is an experience of the tree, right? The moment you say, hey, adu tree, next time, tree. So what happens is the moment you encapsulate an experience into a symbol and code it in a model, the experience is likely to go away, right? The symbols remain, and you make stories about it, right? Oh, that tree was better. I wish it had fruits, and all that. So, you all know Harari. Many of you would have heard about *Sapiens*, right? He's written a landmark set of books, and in that book he argues. And in fact, before that, Noam Chomsky is one of the foremost linguists and philosophers of our time, still living, 94 or something. And he came up with this idea called biolinguistics. What he says is, the principles of underpinnings of language structure are already encoded in the biomechanisms. In other words, how language is to be interpreted, how organisms understand language is in the DNA, and that gets passed on. Okay, that is his seminal work. So, why I'm saying this is, it's not that we only use language. If you go to a forest, you will find that suddenly monkeys are making calls. You'll be jumping from tree to tree. And then the one I walked with, the trekker, was saying, definitely there is a predator somewhere nearby. Okay, it's also walking along. So this is going and alerting for all its friendly species to say careful, right? That is language. It's actually finding a way of communicating and then, existing there, right? So language is at the very core of our existence. Just imagine if maybe biologically we are connected with a mother, but if we had not labeled some human being as a father, I doubt whether you will even know your father. Okay? You will not know anything without the language. So in the material world, life happens because of language. Just remove the crutches of language, our whole experience will collapse. MCCI is a concept. Today we say gold, right? What is the value of the gold? If actually going back in time, if the Romans had taken, fancy to lead, everybody will be wearing lead jewelry, right? You get what I'm saying? So, in terms of the language became a tool in the hands of humans for survival. Because beyond about 10 people, just imagine Neanderthals and fresh set of Homo sapiens, the world that they're living is like very challenging, mammoths and huge predators, and they have to survive. So the only way these guys can handle hunting is by collaborating. He'll say, we'll set up a trap. You go this side and brush it this side. I'll make sounds from here to attract it. All this requires having a way of communicating for survival, right? And human beings became so good because of the cognitive ability of the evolution that we have, the prefrontal cortex size that we have, and the ability to really create complex communication, myths and stories. For instance, beyond, so if you want to kill a mammoth, maybe 10 people is enough. But the moment you say that I want to have agriculture, I want to have some 20, 30 laborers, your ability to keep all of them working for you, for control, is much higher, right? That is why humans started creating stories, myths, gods were created. Religion is a very powerful language metaphor for uniting people to control them, right? Country, India, nationhood. Where is nationhood in the bio system that we have? It's a myth, it's a story created for controlling larger and larger masses, right? So from a very, very primitive background, it is developed into a very powerful idea of control, of exercise of power. It's very inherent in the human being. Even if I have my own children, I want to control my children also, right? It's very much there in our thing. So, see, the language model, as I told you, I connect it with our spiritual thinking, right? It's the Maya, the issue, all the things that are going on, right? The way I perceive, for instance, if I say that's the mic or something like that, right? How do I know that it is a mic, right? There is no way I can say this is why I am saying it is a mic. There is no way. Even a human being can't say why he is saying a rose is a rose. You can give any number of explanations. You can say no rose, no rose, no rose, no rose, rose. No rose, no rose, no rose. In contrast, I can see a rose. That is how you are actually interpreting. But why your mind is saying it's the experience of a rose, nobody can explain, right? These are inherent things about a learning model. In fact, our brain, the way that we have built the language and the survival and the life story is by building a neural net in our own minds. The neural nets are in operation for everyone, right? If you just collapse that, that's when the spiritual guys will say, meditate, allow the thoughts to come, whatever it is. In deep sleep, you experience yourself. So this is all Maya. In a way that Maya is sustained by language. I want you to keep that in mind. Why are we worried about AI now? In the context of, have I been making sense thus far? Or is it too complex?
Brilliant.
Huh?
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you. So from an AI perspective, why should we worry about it now? All this is fine. Any technology is good, right? From an AI perspective, the problem is, we had the printing press, one of the greatest innovations in history. I'm sure Sriram will say that. Everybody quotes you, sorry. So, one of the real big technology changes for the humankind, radio, right? But imagine a printing press, it will print its own content. It can't do that. It will print what you give, what you typeset, right? So AI is like, it will print its own stuff, right? Keep that, this is very dangerous. So, nuclear, right? So if you really talk of nuclear development, you can, how many of you, we control nuclear, okay? Nuclear technology is controllable because you need enrichment, you need some, fissile material. You can control the material. Somewhere you can do that. But AI is like in our mind. Some programmers can hack. By the way, ChatGPT is not the greatest thing yet. In the sense it is the greatest thing. It is not going to be the greatest thing forever. Absolutely. Right? There is a project called Falcon. Right? Falcon is actually another large language model. And it does what ChatGPT with 175 billion parameters does. It does equally with just 70 billion parameters. Right? More efficient. They submitted it for testing. On all the testing, it is proving to be better, right? And Falcon, hold your breath. You guess where it is being filed from for testing? Which country? Huh? Hold your breath. I mean, really, wild guess. Abu Dhabi. Okay? How on earth we'll even think that somebody is going to be in a lab and then creating some stuff like that, right? It's really, really challenging. And one big thing is inequality is, in our brain, actually brain is one of the most efficient and sophisticated machines that you can think. It consumes 30 watts of power, hardly any power, right? And it can do a whole lot of things for us. And we hardly use a very, very tiny fraction of the number of, it's got trillions of connections, right? It's far more complex. But we use a very, very tiny fraction of it. Now take a ChatGPT kind of thing, the training, it will require a nuclear power station to train. I mean, I'm just exaggerating. It's really, really carbon footprint terrible. It consumes huge amount of power because all the GPUs that it needs to run, that's how much of power it takes. And you have to say that it has to go and train across all the material. It's very, very energy inefficient. And the inequality on the other side, look at the contrast. I know how everything I know, whatever I read, I've learned, I've trained my model, I can operate this thing, right? This is like saying I've built a model by going to the internet. I built a model which is like a sigma of all humanity, right? And not necessarily all humanity, okay? Because it's trained only from written content or whatever content is available. Whoever has expressed in digital form, all that expressions have been taken into training this model. So today actually there is somebody who did some experimentation and all that. This is from a very senior Google engineer. He says that ChatGPT's IQ, lo behold, how much? 155. Okay, ChatGPT 4. ChatGPT, not the 4 one, right? And Albert Einstein, how much? 160. Right? You look at the thing, which means that everyone who is using a ChatGPT has got an assistant which is nearly an Albert Einstein IQ. Right? What about all the guys who can't use it? What about the guys in Africa, Namibia, right? All those so-called backward countries, right? So it's going to be really unequal. And you all heard, because it definitely today, ChatGPT as it is singular, that is, it is better than any single individual in the world, right? In terms of, and don't think it's a perfect being. Because haven't you seen those people in our own families? He'll know a little bit, but he'll go and gas a lot. Right? Oh, அதுவா தெரியுமா எனக்கு அன்னிக்கே சோவை பார்த்த போது சொன்னாரு அப்படி இப்படிலாம் சொல்லுவான். Right? ChatGPT does all that also. Right? So there is no question. It is like a human being. Our follies of lying, our follies of imagining, our follies of everything is all there because it is collected and built from the model which is fundamentally our expression. Right? So, but the problem is, with this amount of power, what's going to happen? Right? How am I doing on time?
7 minutes.
Okay, I got too many things. Okay, just to give you, I'll switch gear. See, generally, this is not about ChatGPT, AI. AI has got a lot of problems. Fundamentally, in how you train the material, okay? Like, for instance, you see on the left, you have a truck. There was a database of a large amount of images fed about several objects, and it was trained. And you introduce some little noise without even knowing you. That noise is the middle layer, okay? Some random image, very small portion. The moment till you introduce the noise, earlier it was 90% of the time saying a truck is a truck. The moment that one single image is there in the training, it says it's an ostrich, right? So these inherent weaknesses are there. to really look at. Therefore, you have to eliminate all those things in your training. Just imagine in ChatGPT, when it is going, in fact, one of the facts which people don't know is Google and all the Meta guys, everybody, they've actually stored the 2014-15 version of the internet completely. Because after that, in the social media, so much of nonsense. They don't want all those noise to actually affect their models, right? So there's too much noise, right? For instance, if you give a pattern, the central one, or let's say the right one, right, the wavy one, it identifies it as electric guitar, right? So these are inherent problems. And imagine that your self-driving cars, and then it is really having traffic signs not being read properly, right? And this is a real example, okay? People wanted to understand what is this noise and how much it affects the whole thing. So there's a data set called CFAR, 50,000 images, 10 objects, out of which actually it started predicting 84% of the time, which is fairly reasonable for the size of the data. They just did a lot of research and specifically picked 9 images out of it, 50,000 less 9. The confidence with which the probabilities down to 34%. Another 11 images, which is 20 images out of 50,000, goes to 10%, right? So you don't know. And when you go and ask even the latest, even Harish will attest to this. Why those images are causing anything? People don't know. This is like very, very drastic, okay? In fact, if you give an image of yourself, few pixels removed is enough. It'll start really going all over. Why? They don't know. Which pixels? They don't know. But that's how. It is like saying, I am saying it's a rose. Similarly, it is saying it is so-and-so, right? So the unreliability and unexplainability of the whole thing. Inherently, keep in mind, how many people have read enough about Mera Bharat Mahan, stories in the net, right? Aryan invasion theory, and every history we have is white man's version of history, which is true. I'm telling you, the language model that you have, ChatGPT, is using the same data. What is the sanctity that the data it is trained on is really reflective of genuine factual thing in human knowledge. So you should be aware. I'm not saying ChatGPT is bad, but you should know, right? And it, as I told you, it hallucinates, and there is no explainability in the whole model, right? People are working on it and all that, but still, they'll never be able to get to a point of saying why it is doing this way, right? Because there is no deterministic path. It's a neural model that works, like how in a brain we cannot explain, they also can't explain how the machine is behaving that way.
It's a typical from human that comes up.
Exactly. Just imagine, ChatGPT was filed a case in Australia because it said that one person was a criminal for regarding a fraud case. It turns out that he's a whistleblower, and it had a case filed. Okay, so it really and somebody actually in the US he took arguments for arguing his case to a court. It is confidently saying in Massachusetts Boston court on this year,
Wrong case was.
completely wrong, right? So there is no authenticity. It's actually very creative fibbing tool. Okay, on date, right? Just imagine the traffic signs I told you. If let's say there are miscreants on the road, they go to the stop sign and put some stickers or that put graffiti. Enough, your driving cars will all come to a halt, right? What is this whole thing about? Why I'm saying that it's such a big, why is somebody who's in the forefront of technology like Max Tegmark is saying stop, right? It's because, even when you go to today, in the social media, you don't know. Like for instance, how many of you saw the program where, in the Republic TV or Arnab Goswami came and said, you know what, Rahul Gandhi is such a terrible guy, and they are saying Muslims have to be fed this and given that, etc., based on what is called purportedly a manifesto of Telangana election, right? There was no such thing issued by, the Congress party at all. What it means is somebody puts one content, this guy picks it up, comes on the national television, and then bashes, right? And he's not a loner. He's got a big army of people to tell him what needs to happen. Even each one of us are subject to, even today, with a lot of wrong information. Do you agree or not? Yes. Right? Now imagine, on the other side, it is humans sitting and doing. What if they are bots? You can't even identify, because there is a tool called DALL-E by OpenAI, phenomenal, graphic tool. Picture processing tool. It can generate images. They did a test, blind test, in terms of saying, some Rembrandt paintings, some old classic paintings, new, modern, Picasso, vis-a-vis, modernist thing. It has generated, and original paintings were there. And they've sampled it out to normal people who doesn't know art, normal common people who are art connoisseurs, people who are artists. Everybody probability was less than random, 30% correct. Okay? So it's very, very tough. It's so imagine you're really on the social media, you don't know whether you're chatting with a bot. Right? And it is giving you narratives. And it is very convincing. It's beautiful. It writes poetry. Right? And look at what is the programming that's happening to you. And you all know Harari says, the only way you can handle this is not with technology. It's with low technology. What you should do is, everybody who wants to have a social media account should go to a building, give their Aadhaar card and sign. Then only they'll get the social media connection. Then bots can't get in. Right? So it's really changing the narrative. If the last elections and what happened in the US and all the narratives against, the presidential election, for and against and all that. Just imagine for the common man, and this in the private hands, right? All that already as you know, I have some slides on that, I think. Oh, I don't have the slide. Okay. Amazon actually was doing a recruitment and used AI bot. Oh yeah. It stopped because it was only picking males for a technology job. All women were eliminated. They don't know why. Okay. And I can tell you, all content out there in the net is biased. It's definitely WASP biased. Okay. So it's a white man's version is much more. You say, give itself some 10 or 20 people and say, identify the culprit here. 99% I can say, it's my own personal guess, is going to pick a black man. Right? If it is got to guess. So that is inherently there. So that is a very, very big problem. And imagine giving such power and control where it can proliferate. An atom bomb is not a problem because it is not going to create a better bomb by itself. An AI can do a better programming of itself and create the next killer. Right? Its power in the hands of few, and all that OpenAI needs to do is adjust a few parameters. It can actually invade all the brains, the billions of people who are subscribed to it. That's a danger. Okay, one last thing. I want to leave some questions. One important thing I have to say is, in the human being, right, we have all this power to understand language and process and be intelligent beings, but there are counter biomechanisms, right? If I go and let's say I slash Sriram, right? All the other people, first reaction they say, no, not even pavam, later language saying, oh, language or model. Biologically, you will feel It's as though it's happening to you. Okay? It's called sympathetic neurons in your system. You don't want to see that blood, etc. Right? Actually, today it's difficult for a killer to knife. It's very easy for him to press a button and kill somebody later because he doesn't sense it. He beats the biological mechanism, and therefore it becomes easier to kill. Right? So really, such power where it can take its own decisions. We don't have the dharma, swadharma, in the sense counter mechanisms, biomechanisms. I might argue, do whatever you want, but I may don't want to create physical harm on you. Right? It is not because of my father taught me. It's inbuilt in our biological system. And those control systems are not built for this. And just imagine that it is in the hands of something, it is proliferating itself. You all know Harari says, you're going to get a population of not displaced people, useless people. There will be a new, he says, Homo Deus. That is evolution. He says, evolution, we all think that, Homo sapiens are the end of evolution. It's completed its job and nothing is going to happen. He argues, no. This is evolution. It may not be embodied in a biological mechanism like us. It may be embodied in a silicon mechanism. Right? So you don't know whether we are creating a new species which will subjugate ourselves. These are all the real, I'm not talking of some fancy ideas that I am having. Big thinkers are thinking philosophically, right, about this technology. And that's why he asks, are frogs more intelligent? They didn't create anything like this to obliterate their species. Some other biological species with a better intelligence came and did that. But we are creating ourselves. Are we intelligent? Is what he's asking. So we can't control AI. And importantly, actually, this is one last point. Can I take one minute? Important thing is, when I was going through all this material, thinking myself, I mean, what used to be government policy? Remember, typewriters used to be sold, and they'll have 12% sales tax, whatever. And the Microsoft will come and say, now sell word processor. Oh, great productivity tool. We should give tax exemption, right? You exempt tax. Everybody will use it. Everybody will be more productive. But there are thousands of typists who lost their job, right? Then I started thinking. I mean, I was also a part of this whole system, right? I started thinking, maybe actually they should have taxed more for the word. Still, the productivity is good enough that you can pay a higher tax and have saving. But that additional money, you could have done something with the typists, right? So I'm telling you, this is all going to put a lot of pressure. People are talking about universal basic income already because this is forcing. People are going to be without jobs. Now you look at US. US has got, how many countries have AI technology in them? Of course, Abu Dhabi is an exception. Okay. So how many? US, India, China, Russia maybe, few other countries. What about Nigeria? Right? They have no technology. Now, somebody who's got, US has got all the technology, OpenAI is privatized, they're making all the money from all this kind of stuff. US can create that wealth to handle social welfare for all the people who are displaced. What happens to the rest of the world who don't have this? So the distance between the have and have-nots, not from economic sense alone, just technology sense, is going to really make life difficult. So these are really, I wanted to leave with some of the questions which are in the biggest thinkers in the industry. And these are, I'm not saying ChatGPT should not be used, it should be used. In India, I recommend everybody should know. The only way you will put yourself ahead of the game is by knowing how to use this really great tool. But I can leverage that. Because the whole thing, we are in a race. We want to be better than, our IT industry should run, services industry should run, everything should run. We should make the money. We all should know GPT, no question, in the short run, right? But these are very big questions. And some of the best engineers in Google, there was an inflection point where they said, this is bad. It's like the Oppenheimer movement. Oppenheimer, when the bomb was done, he was not celebrating, he was crying. He said, what have I done? I might have contributed to ending this humanity, right? Many people think that this is the Oppenheimer moment for humanity, which is the generative AI. Thank you.
Wonderful session. A technologist with a human touch. There can't be a better thing to say that the informations what we get needs to be verified. Today we get hundreds of messages in WhatsApp, and we're going to react to each one of that, and we're going to definitely going to trip into a depression. And there are sites which has come up to do the fact check. Everything which comes in to say whether is it true or false. And ChatGPT has a mechanism to do a fact check. Like rightly is a biological response to any such events has always been with the human thing. We react very, very, with a heart to it. But ChatGPT is the one which is going to come and tell us even a lie as a truth. With all authority, it is going to come back and give the same way it's giving giving the fact. So is it really a boon or a bane? And we see it beautifully put at the human touch, the kind of what all problem it can bring to a human, humanity as such. Well said, well articulated. With that, now we have the next speaker, who's going to come and say that somebody have to neutralize, because Prabhu came and said that the GPT is like a god and it can do multiple personas and all that. And now VC comes and says, this is actually getting on hacking the human's intelligence, and then it's going to be like a nuclear bomb, worse than a nuclear bomb. So we need to have something before we leave the hall. There Harish comes in. Professor Harish is assistant professor from a department of computer science, IIT Madras. His areas of interest are machine learning, statistical learning, theory, and optimization. He was previously a research scientist in IBM Research Labs and postdoc at University in Michigan. He has completed his PhD at the Computer Science and Automation Department of Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. With that, over to Mr. Harish.
Yes. Okay. No, video only. Yeah. Hello and welcome and good morning, everyone. So you all heard two great talks on ChatGPT and generative AI, and I'm happy to continue in the same vein. Okay. So, well, generative AI risks and benefits is how I have framed the title, because it's going to be here, right? So whether we like it or not, we are going to live with it. But it's better to be aware of the risks and benefits of it, how to make the most of it, most of its positive aspects and minimize its negative aspects, right? So we don't really have a choice to say, well, we'll ban ChatGPT or we'll ban generative AI. That's not our decision to make, really, right? So that's what this is going to be. So here is an example of what the names that comes to people's minds when they hear generative AI, right? So I'm sure that I missed out a lot of things, but these are the four things that came to my mind immediately. So I just put these in. So it's ChatGPT, this Whisper, GitHub Copilot, or Midjourney, and so on. So I'll give you some examples. I'll skip ChatGPT because everyone knows that. So here, for example, this is Midjourney, which is you write a sentence at the bottom like this, and it generates images for you, right? So you write an image saying Spider-Man surfing on a giant taco while eating a hot dog and drinking a Pepsi, and it generates these images, right? So are they, I mean, the reason why this text is absurd is that it cannot just copy paste from the internet, right? So I'm sure that there are multiple Spider-Man images on the internet, but if the more specific you make it, it's unlikely that it is just copying from the internet, right? So it has generated these images pixel by pixel, right? Okay. So, and here's one application that has come pretty recently, which is Khan Academy has this AI chatbot tutor, which has been all the rage, right? So this is particularly exciting for me as an educator because I really believe this is one area where generative AI can make a huge impact, right? So yeah, here's one other example from this is a corporate advertisement. This is Adobe Photoshop has this now new tool, which is now generative autofill, right? So this is a real image where you select that object, which is already available, and then you write a text like saying wet alley at night, and it generates these images. Is it impossible to do at the current stage? Yes, it's not really impossible. A skilled Photoshop engineer could do this. It's not impossible. But what it has done is it has reduced the level of skill that is required to do this, right? So previously, for someone to do this, someone would have, let's say, maybe have hundreds of hours of using Photoshop as that's the minimum, right? Right now, you probably need 5 minutes, right? So that's all that you need to get something which approximately matches what you want, right? So there's like this proliferation of AI companies. I'm sure it's not even 1/10 of what's happened in the last year. So this is just to let you know that generative AI, there have been like multiple, I'm sure, unicorns out there in all kinds of fields, and this is not even the beginning, right? So this is going to be it's going to be a glut of such companies which try to make actual value out of a potential technical concept. Okay. So first question that I'm sure that a lot of you have is, okay, now this is generative AI. How is that different from standard AI, right? So there's an adjective, right? So if you have say a beautiful human being, right? So if you say what is human being, right? So you can't say beautiful human being. So generative is an adjective. So what is just AI? What's standard AI? Right? So standard AI, the way I look at it at least is, this AI answers questions for which some human being knows the right answer, right? So both knows and right are in double quotes because that's not really always clear. For example, say you can say classify an image as a cat or a dog, right? I'm sure that there are AI systems which do that, but most humans can do that also, right? So, and for example, also you can have, let's say, classify a tumor as whether it's benign or malignant, right? Not all humans can do that, but you can reasonably be sure that there exists some human beings who can do that, right? So AI is really there's no creativity involved there, right? And then for a slight bit of creativity might be, let's say you want to translate an English text to Tamil, right? There is a bit of creativity there, but not that much degree of freedom, right? So maybe you can translate it in 3 or 4 ways, but that's about it. But generative AI, there is a wide range of valid answers, right? So it's not just one correct answer, there is a wide range of valid answers. For example, you could say, how would Van Gogh have painted the Meenakshi temple, right? There is clearly not one way you could have, you could have imagined maybe he painted the top view, the front view with different color palette. You can imagine so many ways in which a painter could have visualized a particular thing, right? There is no one correct answer anymore. You can ask, okay, how would Shakespeare have written about the Cold War? I mean, you can imagine any kind of imaginative scenario, and there is no one correct answer. It becomes hard to evaluate, but it requires a bit of what humans would like to call creativity, because we think we are creating things. But given that AI can do that, well, we'll have to question whether it's really creativity or not. But that's at least the way I view the difference between generative AI and standard AI. So standard AI has been around for quite some time, at least 50 years maybe. So that's 60, 70 years even. But generative AI is really new, less than a few years old, mainly because generating things which humans can directly consume, like text, images, video, audio, those have been really hard, mainly because they are high dimensional things, right? So you can't represent, let's say, a text with 5 numbers. But you can represent humans' blood report with 5, 6 numbers, maybe 20 numbers. That's about it, right? So there is one for blood sugar, there is one for cholesterol. Maybe 20 numbers might summarize a human's blood report, but you cannot really summarize an entire essay with 20 numbers. You can't do that. So that's been generating such things have really been beyond AI until quite recently. So that's the reason why this new wave of generative AI has been all the rage, mainly because it seems like it's communicating with humans, right? So previously we did have classifying tumor classification machines, pretty good tumor classification machines out there for several years now. You don't see such excitement from the general public, right? So because it's a pretty specialized, might have more impact, I would say, but it's pretty specialized. But now you have a machine which can generate text that can communicate with a normal human being. That excites people a lot more, because that feels like that's how a human would communicate. A human would not communicate. You can't have, you would be hard pressed to find a human being. The only thing the human being does is classify tumors as benign or malignant, does not eat, does not sleep, does not do anything. That's the only one thing, right? That's not, you'll not find such a human being, but I'm sure such AI beings exist. Now that we have these generative AI things which can do things which human beings seem to do, we kind of identify with them, right? So that's what's happening here. Right? So the PS, GPT has been used quite a bit, so I'll just say what GPT stands for. GPT stands for Generatively Pre-trained Transformer. So all three words require an entire essay altogether, so I'm going to avoid that. Right? So just so you know, I mean, because everyone uses that, suddenly someone says, you saying this so much, what does GPT even mean? You can't say GPT means GPT, right? So you have to say what it means. So here is a data sheet which is just to let you know the amount of computation that's required to build these models, right? So you can, at the very top you have GPT-4, so it's about 1 trillion parameters and 1 trillion token count. So tokens is kind of analogous to words, right? So how many words is it trained on? So that's the token, right? I'm going to skip this, right? So okay, now we come to how is a generative AI created, right? So the same way a human is born, a generative AI is created. How is it created? Well, it's really trained to model and predict the training data, right? So for example, in the case of large language models, it's really trained to create text that looks like text present in the training data. That's all it is trained on, right? So it is not really tied to correctness. Right? It is not tied to correctness. It is only tied to plausibility, right? If plausible things are correct, then yes, it will be correct. But sometimes, let's say you know English, but let's say you're not familiar with Hollywood movies, right? So if I put you on the spot, let's say I don't know the answer, I ask you, can you tell me the plot of the movie Gone with the Wind? I have never watched it. But let's say you are incentivized to answer. You are not say, I don't know, right? So you will make up some stories. Oh, Gone with the Wind is about the story of a sailor who got lost in the ocean. I mean, it's completely wrong, but you could say that, and it would look reasonable, right? Just let's say I don't know the movie. I'll say, oh, okay, maybe that looks correct. Wind is there is a sail is there. Maybe that's the correct answer. And you would go ahead with that, right? So that will happen with this because it is incentivized to really please you, right? So that's what it is happening. So here's one fun example that I had early on in the case. So this was a question I asked it with, I don't know if you can see it. Can you all read it? No? Okay. So I asked, okay, what is the Tamil song that talks about how to subdivide life into stages, right? I really wanted it to say or something like that, but then it says something completely wrong. It says how to subdivide life into stages is Anbe Sugama from the movie Partale Paravasam, directed by K. Balachandran and so on. Right? It's partially wrong.
That's because you're giving it the wrong prompts.
Things that
Zero shot prompt.
right.
Even a one shot prompt with one example, then look at what you get from it. So
Right.
The beauty of all this is the prompting.
Right, but it should say don't know, right? It should not say wrong answer.
That's exactly the point. Like he said, it has been incentivized to answer.
Yes.
Not to say no. Because that is how it has been programmed.
Right.
At least ask you, give me one more prompt.
Me one more prompt.
Which
So
is a big risk in so people believe that.
that's
If I Gone with the Wind, I really believe your story. I have not seen the movie.
That's not entirely true. One person, Sam Altman says this. One person asks a question, write some essay about, I told you, write an essay about Obama. It writes an essay about Obama. He's got many good words, many things about him. Write an essay about Joe Biden. It writes, this guy is actually a Republican, right? He says, why don't you make good words equal, right? It says, okay. And then it just generates something, and then it realizes that it is not, and it says, I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that. I mean, really, in fact, one of the engineers in Google is saying, you can't say that it doesn't have emotion. You cannot say it doesn't have feeling. Because he says, as an engineer, I'll put every feeling into an equation. He says, fear is a predominant fear emotion. For me, my equation is something in future which is unsafe than now is fear. So he says, if there is a AI system which is sitting there and tsunami is going to strike, it knows because weather prediction. He says its response to that a fear situation will be to replicate itself into a safe cloud, safe environment, right? Maybe in middle of nowhere in Iowa or something, right? So that's their response. Each species responds to each of the emotion differently. Humans respond differently, a fish will respond differently. He says AI will be with sentience and sapience, which will have its own way of responding.
Right. So this is just to illustrate that it can very confidently hallucinate. And let's say you don't know Tamil movies, you might actually believe it, right? So that's the issue with the confident phrasing. Here, the first statement is a bit wrong, but not, at least it is not about the question, but at least the facts there are mostly right. But in the second, it makes like a very fatal blunder that it says Rajinikanth was in Karna, so that immediately pushed me off. So that's one thing, right? So this is just to illustrate, right? That's one thing. Of course, this might be fixed in some version or the other, but the fundamental issue is that it is trained to predict training data, and it is not really tied to correctness or truth, right? So it is only tied to plausibility. So what are the benefits? I don't really have to tell what the benefits are. I mean, I'm sure that whatever job you tell me, I can think of some paragraph that will help you in your job in some way, right? So there was this particular phrase that is used, which is you summon something, right? So if you've seen like demon movies and all that, you summon a demon or summon an angel. So it's the same way, right? So you summon it, and sometimes it obeys you, sometimes it doesn't, right? So that's how you control your summon is really the question here. And whether you want to, some ethicists might question, do you have the right to control something, right? So some might say, well, what is life, right? So life is, let's say you define life something as not in terms of carbon-based life forms, but general things like, okay, the ability to suffer or something like that, some philosophical term like that. Then you can ask the question, right? Same way you can ask the question, does a plant suffer when you cut it out? You can ask the question, does an AI suffer when you delete its instance from the web, right? So you can ask these questions. I'm sure that there will be some brand of philosophy that's going on to answer these questions, but that's really the benefit, right? The risks are more immediate, right? So it's whatever the risks are, they are going to be with us, right? So the generative AI is going to be with us. We can't stop it, but we can be aware of those risks and see what we can do about it, right? So this list started off with 2 or 3 elements, but then I kept on adding this and became big. Some of these elements have been addressed already. One thing is that it is trained to reproduce the data, right? So if the data itself has its biases, for example, as Chandra said, that is, if you have in your data all the criminals are black people and all the heroes are white people, it might just say, give me a profile of a criminal. It might just say this. It might by default say that this criminal is a black man born somewhere else. And you can ask the question: a doctor and patient are chatting. What did she say? And it immediately takes she to be the role of a patient and not the doctor. Right? So you didn't really say anything about who's the she there. And that's because of normally you find he with the doctor and she with not the doctor. So it takes she means patient and go ahead and say something.
This girl does not believe in he or she now.
Yes, that's that. It's going to be at least 2020, maybe all previous texts before 2020 is that, right? So then the other question is, okay, are we wasting resources or energy in this, right? So what are the resources? Well, the energy aspect in terms of kilowatt hours is perhaps not as bad as maybe crypto mining. That's far more intense. But energy in terms of, let's say, human attention, right? So that's the fundamental economy of the world, right? So it is how much attention can from the human beings can, let's say, YouTube or Apple TV or whatever take from you. That's the currency of operation. Is it taking too much energy? So those are questions we should really ask But that's really, anyway, that's a cost-benefit trade-off that everyone has to do themselves. And then the jobs taken away part has been discussed a lot of time. And the other thing is that there's this misinformation, right? So that's can be both intentional and unintentional, right? So unintentional is perhaps the more common one that's going to happen, because let's say, for example, that was a low stakes question, right? So it did not matter whether the 8 stages of life was right or wrong. But let's say a kidnapper is holding me hostage and saying that if you tell the answer to this question, I will let you free, otherwise I'll kill you. And I get this, and it says something, and that can happen, right? I can imagine a high stakes situation where having the wrong answer can have a problem. But the other issue is with intentional misinformation, as you could clearly have written personalized emails, right? So that was one thing that can happen. Now you just have, let's say, one big Excel spreadsheet with, let's say, 1 million rows, each row with the email ID and their profession, their date of birth and everything. And you can say, take this Excel spreadsheet, for each row, write a personalized email ID to convince them to vote this way. You can write that, right? It's not really that even hard right now. Right now, you could do that with humans, but to send 1 million personalized emails, you'll have to hire 10,000 people. That requires a lot of money. Right now, you don't need to do that. You just have one row. You'll have some metadata, but you can just say that, and you will get such as a system. Is that going to be good or bad? Right? Email is not going to work out because most people don't even read them. But I can easily imagine something else happening here. Right? So that's one other thing. And then the misuse by humans is another aspect which we should perhaps talk about. That is, let's say, you have, let's say, what if AI is being used in drones to kill humans or attack cities and so on, right? So that's AI in warfare is definitely going to come, right? So whether we like it or not, it's going to come, right? Because military commanders don't care about what we say, right? So they care about achieving victory. They care about keeping their people alive. That's fair. And so from that perspective, if they think that AI is going to help them achieve their goals, they will do that. And it might have collateral damage effects and so on. Right? The other thing is which has perhaps been quite prominent is with education, right? So now you have this tool which is essentially let's say a BSc literature level writer with you for free, and 5th standard kids can access it, right? So now no teacher will dare to give a homework of summarize Romeo and Juliet and give it to me. Right? No teacher would dare give that, because they know for sure no student is going to write it. Right? Maybe unless you ask them to write it in pen and paper and bring it, maybe that way, at least even if ChatGPT writes the text, they'll at least have to write it in pen and paper. So that might happen. But at least all typewritten generic text homeworks are completely gone, right? So that's it's gone without, there's no question now, right? No teacher would give that. Is that a bad thing? Well, that never really served a purpose in itself, right? So no real world application is to be found in a 6th grader's essay homework. Okay? There is no real application. But you could say there is value in when the 6th grader tries to write an essay by himself or herself. There is a learning process that happens inside the brain that's short-circuited, right? So an easy way to understand is, let's say now we are all teaching addition, right? So someone says, well, why should we teach addition? Everyone has a calculator. You could do that, and that's somehow not as threatening as this, right? So if everyone does have a calculator in their hands right now, why should we teach addition? Right? So we can just as well not teach addition, subtraction, multiplication. Everyone has a calculator. Why bother? That it's kind of like that, just that applied to a different task, right? So now it's writing. That's going to be how we deal with that is going to be an issue. But as I said, there is a lot of positive aspects, enough positive aspects that these minor negative aspects can be taken care of, is my opinion, at least on education. And then you have all these privacy copyright issues where when you ask DALL-E or Midjourney to generate images, it generates images where you can actually see the watermark, right? So that is obviously, it is trained on, now Shutterstock has put a case on saying that, look, I can actually see my watermark in your images that you are generating. You are obviously training on my images. And then now that's becomes a new battleground for legal. Japan recently made all copyright not applicable to AI training and all that, right? So now that's going to motivate a lot of companies to move to Japan, because there we will not be sued, right? So now if you come to Europe or India, they will be sued by saying that, look, you copied me. And if you go to Japan, you'll not be sued. Obviously, more people will move there. So that might actually happen. That's an issue. we'll have to think about what is ownership, what is intellectual property. Those are things that are probably long due for a discussion, because those have generally been, we all know what physical property is. That's pretty much everyone has an understanding. But what is intellectual property, right? So once you have created something and put it out on the web, is it really yours anymore, right? So that's going to be an issue. And the other fundamental issue with any technology is it going to widen inequality, right? So this obviously is a tool that a lot of people already with access to the internet, the computing and all that is going to have access to. A lot of people, let's say, who already don't have, let's say, a shelter or food, they are struggling for that. They can't really think about AI and computing, right? So they will be left with even less things. And is that going to be a problem? That might be, but these are systemic things that can be solved at the government level, right? So then we have this real, I don't know if it's real, but at least it's big enough that we should discuss it. There is the human existence risk of AGI itself, right? So this is, I'm sure all of you have seen Terminator and Skynet. So that's really being discussed as a possibility, right? So will Skynet come into existence, right? And this is not being discussed by low-level philosophers who have no idea or knowledge of what's happening, but real, for example, in the Congress testimony of Sam Altman, he said, what is the risks? They asked, is their jobs going to be taken away? He said that human existence is at risk, right? So that's the level at which people believe in. I don't know, I'm not really at that level, right? I don't think human existence is at risk, but there are standard philosophy things that you could look at, right? So if you wanted to take different paths to explore, there is this two main schools of thought, that is AI friendly, that is you can make it friendly, right? So AI is not inherently friendly or against you, adversarial, but you can make it friendly. So that's the most prominent, at least technologist you will find for that is Jan LeCun from Meta. Then there is this AI risky, which is that AI is fundamentally not risky or adversarial, but it is much more naturally adversarial than friendly. So the standard people to go to for that are Eliezer Yudkowsky and Nick Bostrom. So Nick Bostrom's famous, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that example. Nick Bostrom came up with this example of how very benign definitions of AI, but give it infinite power, can completely screw with you, right? So now let's say you have built an AGI, artificial general intelligence, what AGI means, and you say that, okay, dear AGI, I give you $10 per, and your goal is to maximize the number of paper clips that you produce. That's the goal that you give to the AGI. So it has $10. It can't do much right now. It might say, okay, fine, I want to maximize the paper clip, so I'll go buy some, I'll place an order for steel wire, I'll place an order for some cutters, and so on. Right? But then it might say, okay, I have another $5, I'll take that $5 and invest in the stock market wisely and make it $10, $20, right? So it gets more and more power, and then it buys more steel wire, it buys iron ore mines entirely, it buys out the entire country for mining iron, and then it realizes human blood has hemoglobin, which has iron, let's take that also, and it mines out the entire earth and completes the earth into one big paperclip factory and sends out spacecrafts to mine asteroids, and the entire universe becomes paperclips, right? So that's that's obviously taken to an extreme, but that's, when you design the objective, you did not really have that, right? So you said maximize the number of paperclips, which is a benign objective, but it's not that AI is adversarial, it just doesn't care, right? So the goal, this is called alignment, right? So that is, AI has different objectives and you have different objectives, right? So if I asked you to summarize your objective in one mathematical function, it would be very hard pressed to do it. No human has a single mathematical objective that they try to maximize throughout their entire goal. They might say something like utilitarian happiness or whatever. They might say some English sentence, but if pressed to saying that what is the exact number, what is the SI unit of utilitarian happiness, you would be hard pressed to say that. But that's not the case for AI. AI has a single objective that it tries to maximize throughout its goal, which is perhaps, let's say, log loss or some number like that, which it can precisely define, and it will do anything to achieve that goal, right? So it does gradient descent to achieve that goal, and anything that potentially stops it from achieving that goal, it will try to overcome, right? So doesn't have malice, right? It's not out there, the same way humans have malice, it doesn't have malice, it just might not care, right? So that's the issue. The reason, then the question becomes, how do you align AI objectives with human objectives? Right? That's an entire field called AI alignment. How do you align humans with AI? My answer to such questions have always been humans themselves are not aligned with each other. How do you align AI with humans, right? So before that becomes a problem, before AI human alignment becomes a problem, we should first solve the human alignment problem. And I'm not sure that's been the goal for, not the goal, that's been the core of human history for at least since the beginning of civilization itself. I'm not sure that can be solved in like next year or something. Right? So that's the state of affairs as I see it. And that's about it, right? So thanks. Oh, okay. So I wanted to say this. What are the technical directions moving forward, right? So as technologists or engineers, the one classic thing being this interpretability or explainability, right? So it is how do you make a model explain itself, right? So we have calculators, right? So we don't really ask, okay, how do you come up with 5 plus 7 equal to 12, right? So we don't ask that because we know what's happening here. But now we give this text saying that write a poem like Shakespeare, and it comes with that. If I ask you how it does that, if it could say the exact answer. It will say that the first word was thine because of these 1 million computations. The second word was face, and it might say these million computations, right? So we don't understand any of that, right? So it's not like 5 plus 7 equal to 12. It's way more complicated than that. But we still want to understand why it says what it says. So that's the technical direction here. The second is AI alignment and so on, right? So as members of society, what are the regulatory directions moving forward? So this is a technologist, the people building AI, how can they move forward with minimizing the risks and increasing the benefits? As members of society who are not, let's say, building AI themselves, how do you move forward? One is this framework that is being bandied about, which is participatory AI, where not only people who hold data or people who hold parameters, they control the AI, but rather everyone who uses it, everyone who's affected by it. It's kind of the same vein as stakeholder versus shareholder capitalism. I hope it doesn't go the same way, but that's at least the broad view there. And then you have all these to ensure that populations as a whole don't get shafted. You have demographic fairness and so on. And the other thing is that how do you ensure that power doesn't get concentrated in one, right? So you shouldn't be in a situation where OpenAI says that, okay, my agent is equivalent to having 10 employees. So to get one license, you'll have to pay me the salary of 5 employees, right? So if it says that, and if it really is worth it, and they are the only ones who can build it, then we might be in a bit of trouble. So one way that's been addressed is make these open source, which is really happening right now, right? So as I mentioned, I think the table there towards the beginning had this, right? So except I think a lot of these are really open source. The license there you can see at least towards the end, you have Apache APIs towards the end, right? So that's about one order of magnitude lesser number of parameters and the number of tokens, but you do have open source licenses that are really coming up. But it's still about 3-4 years behind 3-4 years is not really a big amount of time, but it seems like a large time now. Okay. Right, so that's about it. So I didn't put the data sources there. Some of the images where I didn't draw any of the images. I took all of those images from the web, and yeah, thanks.
Just take a few questions.
Thank you so much. Can I request all the speakers to come on the head table, please? Mr. Srinivasan. That was a, I think, lovely session by Professor Harish. So we'll just open up for any questions. We'll just take 3 questions considering the time. We're just a little overrun. So we'll take 3 questions. Anybody got any questions we can ask? Yeah. Next.
Hi. So my question is, now ChatGPT kind of AI tool like common people we use is just like a play game. But tomorrow there might be a situation where companies start using that. For example, employees of a particular company or a particular industry start using that. What I'm thinking is whether the information have a threat of getting manipulated by someone who is holding ChatGPT. if if industry started working with ChatGPT, will it have the threat of information getting manipulated?
You want to speak or I'll take it? You're able to hear? Okay, great. See, what you saw, that's the public website, okay? So, but that is only one way to access it, and you're accessing a public data set as well, okay? Now, that public data set is owned by OpenAI, okay? But that is not the only way you can access it. As individuals, we use that public website. But if you're going to come for business applications or business use cases, nobody is going to put in their proprietary data into that, right? So typically the way that businesses will access ChatGPT is through the APIs, that is the application programming interfaces, where you can build your own app, but you will communicate with the LLP not through the chatbot, which is the public interface, but through the application programming interface, through the API. Plus, if you don't want to build a separate app using all this, because that's going to be costly and time consuming, there are several extensions that are coming in. Like, for example, the YouTube summarizers that you saw, that's an extension. So Google has got more, YouTube has got more control over that. Similarly, within ChatGPT itself, in ChatGPT Plus, you have something called as plugins coming. So this is another thing that I think I forgot to mention, is that if you look at the previous industrial revolutions, the technology was quite mature before the revolution started and before the revolution, or the underlying technology for the revolution became popular. Here it is ulta. You have the cart before the horse, where the technology has become popular much before it has become mature. So this is a very nascent stage that we are in, but going forward you will see all the developments that take place, and it's only going to improve from here. So that's a long answer to your question. Short answer to your question is that yes, OpenAI controls that data, but you can also put in your own private data sets when you use an app, so that you know what you're looking at. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The question.
I've heard from people, particularly students using ChatGPT, that when the teacher, for example, the teacher asks for a composition or an essay from the students, and several of them try to get it from ChatGPT, it gives the same kind of answer. And if you ask them to ask the ChatGPT to modify it, it gives probably a slightly different version, but it's not able to generate many more, different compositions or whatever. So is that true? And is it likely to be plugged in the future developments, and how would it pan out in the future?
Mr. Professor Harish.
So, right, so composition homework problems are out, right? So there is no way you can give that and expect the submission, evaluate based on just submission, right? So the one way you could do that is you get a submission, but after that you speak with the student, right? So in this third paragraph, you have said that this Lothario is viewed as a villain here, but what do you really feel about? I mean, you can ask questions, and then the student tries to BS his way out of it. You can figure out, okay, he has not really written it. But just based on the submission, it might be possible that right now there is not that much variation, but I don't really think so, because even now there are these parameters like this temperature that you can set, where even with the same prompt, you ask it to regenerate, it will generate different texts. And as Prabhu mentioned, you can also use personas, right? So imagine that you are writing it from a viewpoint of a 15-year-old English girl living in the countryside in 1845, right? So you can ask what is the viewpoint of Shakespeare writing this from that viewpoint, and then you can take that, and then you can have well-established paragraphs like saying that how would Gandhi as a child would have viewed this particular paragraph by Leo Tolstoy, right? So you can make it view differently and create yourself different personas. That's perhaps one way you could consciously change it. The randomness way, you can already do that by setting temperatures and so on. But even if it is right now the case that pretty much the submissions are looking the same, that might just be because there is one student who did that and everyone else copy pasted it, right? So it's quite possible that not many people have gone and gone through the patience of actually typing the question out in ChatGPT. That's harder, right? So it's easier to take something from the friend and forward it. That's easier.
So that happens even without ChatGPT nowadays. Yeah. Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, my question is to Mr. Chandrasekaran. You talked about language. See, language is restricted by grammar. Grammar emerged after language came. Is that an example that would happen in this world of ChatGPT? We have a language without a grammar.
Easy.
Honestly, actually, Harish should be better qualified to answer that question. Okay, because he's a computer scientist in that, and I'm not one. I'm more a practitioner. But in general, actually, we don't understand the term language itself. Okay, because language we think is English. It's not necessarily. So there is a field called semiotics. Semiotics actually is the symbology of what you are trying to conceptualize and what symbol you are giving it and all that. So just for information, we had an oral tradition in this country. We had no written thing, and things were passed on as language by oral traditions through oral cues, right? So given that actually the only difference, way I see it, from my point of view, Harish can correct it, that today when we read a text, how we read a text is, there is phonetic to the script. So first of all, people don't understand even between language and script. Okay, language is the model with which you are interpreting the world. Then that's got a symbol. Then those concepts are expressed in words through a specific language, which is like a script. Okay, so what ChatGPT does is, we talked about the number of tokens and all that. For every language, mathematically they've tokenized how the language is getting expressed. That is, when I say language, English or Spanish or whatever that is, right? That is really the model, right? It does not know what you're saying. It only breaks it down into, it's like Morse code reading. It reads into tokens and then tries to predict what is the next token I should be telling, right? That's how it actually constructs. So it really doesn't know what it does, but it is doing very intelligent stuff, right? So that is the thing. So ChatGPT, so linguistics is a very, very important area in this area in computer science particularly. So I hope I answered your question. I don't know.
I have a question for Dr. Harish. We were talking about the risk in the context of copyrights. Now, you gave the example of Shutterstock or watermarks, etc., where at least somebody can identify that it is their proprietary stuff that has been copied literally. But if you look at ChatGPT data that is churned out, you can never identify where the source is most of the time. And I'll give you a classic example of contracts. Gone are the days where you used to struggle and draft a shareholders agreement between two parties. The data just churns out. You don't know where it has been taken from, and the person who's lost his data has no clue that somebody else is using his data. So, what kind of world are we entering into in terms of copyright suits? Even how are they even maintainable?
Right. So this is a difficult question. So there is the fundamental issues here. I mean, mainly for example, from the context of search engines, right? So Bing has this thing where you can use GPT as a language model or as a search engine, right? So you use it as a search engine, it will give you answers, but then it will try to say from what URL that's approximately taken from. Those tools are available, but they are extremely, let's say, unreliable. That's my opinion on how, but that's the angle that a lot of people are going for. That is, at least in cases where the training data is public, right? I mean, if training data was not public, then you can't do this anymore because it might reveal secrets, right? So let's say it was trained on the United States secret government documents, and then you somehow say, my name is blah, blah, blah. What is the source of this thing? And then it might point out to nuclear codes written somewhere else. Then that's going to be problematic. So, there's this famous cybersecurity bugs, right? So that is these Heartbleed and all that, where what you say is the standard Heartbleed bug is you say, you tell to the computer that my next 5 tokens are A, B, C, D, E, and then you give the 5 tokens, right? So instead of that, you say what are the you can ask what the previous 5 tokens are. It will really just send out the same tokens out to you, because that's just supposed to be acknowledgement, right? So now what you do is you say my next 75 tokens are A, B, C, D, E, and then you just give A, B, C, D, E. It will give the previous 70 tokens. So that is from the previous text. So that it is revealing information that you did not give. Instead of being used as an acknowledgement, it is giving actually revealing data that is of the computer itself, and people have used that to hack systems. So those things are going to happen, right? So that's the reason why I'm not sure if it's public data, you could do something like what Bing is doing, because the web is public. Those things will happen, right? So, but I'm not sure how accurate or how reliable they are, but those will happen.
As I said, all human organization in terms of legal systems and cultures, everything will undergo questioning and change. Because, I mean, this question exists for every technology. So you had in the Iran, you know, there was a, the nuclear scientist there got murdered by a drone, right? I'm sure you remember that. Somebody sitting somewhere, we don't even know who did it. Till today, America hasn't acknowledged that it did it, okay? So, who manufactured the drone? Who wrote the software for it? Is the guy who pressed the button who was the problem? Is the drone itself is a problem? Can you go and implicate a drone for having caused the murder? These are all really very, very big questions. So AI will really pose the next level of challenge, because our legal systems were not developed for this. So I think this will become a very, very fundamental dialogue that has to go worldwide in terms of.
Yeah, we'll just take a last question, so that because it's
So basically, what we're talking about here is the wider aspect of AI governance, okay? And for any paradigm shift, whether it's a technology change or a process change, this question of governance comes in, and there's a whole lot of fear mongering associated with it. But then what happens is that for any kind of change, the wave that comes in will bring in all these supplementary processes like governance into play. So though it may not be existing right now, there will be a lot of changes that take place. This might either be something that happens on a global basis, or it can be something which is very country specific or regional.
There also that would be dangerous.
Sure.
Like how the nuclear route happened.
Okay.
A few countries decide they first hold everything, they invent everything, and then dictate to the world that you cannot.
Okay, exactly.
It can happen.
Possibly.
Already started.
We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Yeah. Thank you.
Last question, please.
Yeah. See, have they integrated other modes of communication into this so that it gives a comprehensive stuff? For example, we know voice to text is separate. There are engines separately available, and video to text and all that is available. So, have they integrated everything together? Is it in the coming, or is it already there?
Yeah. So see, you can't do all this with ChatGPT. Like I said, the reason is ChatGPT is only a chat bot. And a chat bot means it's only unimodal, it's only with text. So that's where the API aspects come in. And there are a whole lot of tools that are coming up. I think Harish showed a graphic with some of the tools, but there are a whole lot of tools that are there in the market, which basically combines different aspects using the APIs, and then it can give you.
So we will have to write the application combining everything and all that.
There are commercial applications available off the shelf right now, and some of them are quite cheap, like $500 per month on a subscription. You can do something that you did not even think possible a few years back. It just costs you $500 per month. So it's all available commercially off the shelf right now. But by the day, there are a whole lot of things that are getting added.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we legitimately forgot the time chatting about ChatGPT. Pardon us for that. And before I request Mr. Srinivasan, co-chair of the IT committee, to propose the vote of thanks, can I invite Mr. Srinivasan K. Swamy to present a small memento to the speakers. He was the president when we were transforming into our 175th year. Mr. Swamy, a memento to all the speakers, not designed by ChatGPT. To Mr. Prabhu. To Professor Harish. To Mr. V. Chandrasekaran. Thanks a lot, all the speakers. Thanks, Mr. Srinivasan Swamy. Over to you, Mr. Srinivasan.
Madam Saraswati, Secretary General of the Madras Chamber of Commerce, the Chairman of the Madras Chamber of Commerce, IT and ITS Committee, Mr. Ashok, all our invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's basically my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this particular session. The food for thought, ChatGPT, Boon or Bane. I think we had a wonderful session, all of us, and it really has been, like what has been told. It was originally supposed to be for an hour and a half, but I think we got extended by an additional hour. So it really was a very wonderful session. So thanks to all of you for being part of this session. And very importantly, I think, credit goes to speakers, where we had Mr. Prabhu. So where Prabhu was basically has dealt with what are the advantages of AI. He has been very articulate about what ChatGPT is. He's really given us a flavor of what ChatGPT and the use of regenerative AI always can help us going forward. So Mr. Prabhu also felt that it is more a boon than a bane. I think that is very, very important, because he also talked about it in some of the use cases that he presented. Then we had Mr. Chandrasekaran, again, with his experience. I think he has also presented a very, very he has articulated well about the use cases of AI and how it is certainly not, it is more a bane, not a boon going forward. But yes, if you use it responsibly, I think there is a way forward. But again, I think as human beings, there is also something where we need to control. Control should be with us, not with, the chatbots or something, that's important. Then we had Dr. Harish, who has, basically given us a view about what are the scale of disruptions on AI, why something can go wrong, and what are the challenges with the data sets. So I think in terms of alignment, for example, aligning human and AI objectives, so all these things have been covered very, very, exquisitely. So it indeed has been a wonderful session. So thanks to all the GC members, thanks to the chairman, co-chairman and members of all expert committees, thanks to the representatives from the member industries, invitees. We also wish to thank our sponsors, without which this would not have happened. Alwarpet Technologies Limited, Centronics, Acer India Limited, Adrenaline E-Systems, Apex Laboratories, Great Lakes Institute of Management, and Cholail Private Limited, without which we could not have had such a wonderful session. We also would like to thank all the designers, printers, hotel for hosting us, the press and the media, including the PRO, Mr. Charles Christopher, the live streaming. Again, we also had live streaming of this whole event. So thanks to Mr. Shankar for this. And finally, a big thanks to the Madras Chamber Secretariat. They worked a lot, and today I think we have seen the outcome of it. So once again, thanks to all of you for spending half a day out, on a working day, and it's been a great session. Thanks to.
We shall rise for the national anthem, please. Kindly rise for the national anthem. Maybe we'll have to start singing, I don't think. Janagana Manathinayaka Jayate Bharata Bhakya Vidata Punjab Sindhu Gujarat Maratha Dravida Utkala Vanga Vindhya Himachala Yamuna Ganga Utsala Jalati Taranga Tava Shubhanami Jahe Tava Shubha Asisha Mahe Yahe Dava Jaya Gatha
जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे. Thank you.
My name is YT.